and welcome to the Messed Up to Setups podcast. I am comedian Michael Halcomb, and today I get to hang out with a fellow comedian, Amanda Hacker, so stay tuned. We're going to have lots of fun.
It's all messed up, yeah, everything's messed up. We're going from this mess up to the next setup. Everything seems so messed up, but it's just our setup.
All right, Amanda, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So just right off the jump, tell us, where are you from?
I'm from a little town called Argus, Indiana, which is near Plymouth area. So I'm up towards the top of Indiana, up by Michigan.
Right on. So you're straddling kind of the border. How far are you from the border of Michigan?
About an hour. I don't know how many miles that is. As a typical Midwesterner, I gauge everything by how many minutes it takes to get somewhere instead of miles. So it's about 60 minutes to get to the border.
That's an interesting insight. We do that, don't we? Like we gauge by miles. Yeah. Wow. Cool. So you're in India. Did you grow up there in Argus?
I did. Well, I didn't grow up in northern Indiana. I actually grew up in central Indiana over by Muncie.
Yeah. All right. Right on. So did you go to college anywhere?
I did. Well, so that's a funny story too. I kept changing my major. I kept trying to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I went to a few different universities. I was going for mortuary science for a little bit. I was going to take over the family business. My dad owned funeral homes my whole life. And so my dad is kind of a natural comedian as he is. I mean, you kind of have to be in that industry to keep a sense of humor. And so we just kind of grew up being made to, in order to survive at our dining room table growing up, you had to have a sense of humor. And that's definitely awesome. With my dad at the helm.
That's awesome. Does your comedy revolve around, not revolve around that, but do you work that into your comedy, I assume?
I do. There's a joke. It wasn't the one I was going to go over today, but there's a joke I tell where my dad, he actually made the comment to me, "I've applied more makeup than you ever will." Which is a really strange conversation to have with your father unless you're one of the Kardashians.
Oh, that's great. Applied more makeup than you ever will. That's awesome. Wow, that's an interest. So you grew up around a funeral home?
I did. We lived in the funeral home for a little bit.
That is crazy. Wow, that's a really unique story. Can we hang on that and talk about that for a minute?
Sure.
Oh, that's super fascinating. What was it like to have friends over?
Well, so my 6th grade birthday slumber party was in the funeral home. So oh my goodness, there are people I graduated with that I went to elementary school with that will still talk about Amanda Hacker's slumber party in the funeral home because you just don't hear of that. But we lived in the funeral home, so why not have the slumber party there?
That's awesome. That's like a night of a not sleepover. Nobody's sleeping during that night.
Right. Well, and the number of 12-year-old girls that wouldn't even walk down the hall because my dad happened to have bodies there at the same time because they had active funerals going on. And so, yeah, that was a funny story too. Girls just being scared to be in the building.
That is wild. What movie is that where
My Girl,
that's it. Yeah, yes. That's coming to mind. That's so funny. You had a slumber party in the funeral home. What was your car? Like one of those, was it a hearse?
No.
Yeah.
I did drive a van for a while that used to belong to the funeral home, but all they transported in it was flowers.
Okay.
So no bodies in my car.
Fun. That's such a unique perspective on the world. So you were literally surrounded by death. I mean, in a sense, growing up. And
I was.
I imagine that that shapes your worldview, your outlook on life to some degree.
Absolutely. Well, like I was saying, I mean, to grow up in that and be around that, you had to have a sense of humor because otherwise you would just carry everybody else's pain. You know, when you work in that industry, your day of work is always going to be somebody's worst day of their life. And so
Hmm.
to you, it's just a regular Tuesday, but to them, it's, this earth shattering day. And so you kind of have to have a sense of humor to really grasp that.
Right. Wow. So what about your mom? Was she part of the family business? Like so you're,
She was, until she actually had a massive stroke when I was 10 and ended up in a nursing home for the last 14 years of her life. So I also grew up in nursing homes visiting my mom. And that was also a huge reason why, I had to have a sense of humor, because my mom was kind of the class clown of the nursing home. She was the prankster. Because she was mentally there just enough to get herself in trouble, if that makes sense. Like, she wasn't
that's
completely at her full faculties, but she would do stuff to prank the other nursing home residents. And so,
amazing.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that is such a unique like childhood, such a unique like just teen years.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's the old like sort of adage that, a lot of comedy comes out of pain, right? Or tragedy.
Sure.
And it kind of sounds like that's holding true in your situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am that person. I can have a devastating thing happen to me and I'm cracking jokes about it within a few minutes, because otherwise I will just, you just swim down instead of swimming up. And comedy is how you swim up when there's a tragedy that occurs.
I love that. So one of the things I wrestle with on my blog a lot, I find myself coming back to writing posts about it often, is like, how soon is too soon?
Sure.
And I'm curious about your perspective. I have a particular view on that, but I'm really curious about what's your perspective on that as a comedian.
Ooh, I feel like that's so case by case.
Yes.
It's 2025. Can we make 9/11 jokes now? I don't know. Like those are kind of those are kind of the thoughts that go through my mind immediately, is like, what tragedy, or what is it? Comedy is tragedy plus time. And so
Right.
it's like, how much time is enough? I really don't know. I'm not answering your question because I think it depends on the situation. I know for me, if
Yeah.
it's my own personal tragedy, I am cracking jokes about it pretty much immediately, even if it's only in my head.
Right.
I am very sensitive to those around me.
Yeah, that's a very similar answer to what I give. Like it's different for everyone. The line moves, right? There isn't a fixed line. It moves based on the circumstance, based on the people involved. So yeah, I don't think we can pin it down. But I'm like you. I'm kind of like, if I don't laugh about this, I'm gonna go mad.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of my stand-up comedy motto is, I have two of them. One is, if it's messed up, it's material. And two, laughter is greater than outrage, right? So I want to find the funny in everything, because I'd rather laugh about it than be angry and outraged
Exactly.
over it,
That is so true.
So yeah, that's what an interesting sort of origin story for you. Grew up in a childhood, and then you were in rest homes as well. Man, that's interesting. So in your comedy, I watched one of the clips that you had on your website.
Mm-hmm.
In your comedy, do you tend to go personal? Do you tend to go current events? Like, where do you head in your comedy? What are you targeting?
Yeah, mostly personal. I feel like I've got enough crazy material of my own to whip up, plenty of content. But I also did an entire set recently. It's not on my website, but I did a mental health set because I personally suffer from some mental health issues like ADHD and
Mm,
depression. And
yeah.
so for me, those are things that I decided to tackle mental health because, again, like you just said, if you don't laugh about it, you will go mad. And
Yeah.
so I definitely got very personal on that one, sharing some stories, because I had a situation a couple years ago. I went dark. I had a mental breakdown and ended up in a institution for about 5 days because I wanted to end it all.
Wow.
But humor is how I survived even just that circumstance, because to be honest with you, that first day of being in the hospital, I was, upset and depressed and shy and didn't want to talk to anybody. And I'm an extrovert. So for me not to want to talk to anybody, there's something going on with me mentally. But by the last day that I was there, I was high-fiving people. I was like the class clown of the mental institution. I'm not even kidding. Like I was like, I had made all kinds of friends that I'll never see ever again. But
Wow, man. So yeah, I've as somebody who's been through depression, I remember two distinct events, in my life, and it just knocked me out. Right, was out for days, just sleeping and unable to move. So yeah, I think that stuff. I think it's interesting from a comedian's perspective to try to like circle back to those things. It can be really painful, really hard.
mm-hmm.
But I think people can just relate to that so much, even if they've never been like down, down, down in the dumps. Like at some level, we've all dealt with depression, so we can relate to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
These days, or where are most of your performances happening? Clubs? Like where are you performing?
Clubs. I perform a little bit of everywhere. I have performed at a barbecue institution. I have performed at a donut shop. I performed at a library up in Michigan a few months ago. That's what kind of got me onto using libraries as a venue, because they're usually very inexpensive to rent out. And I operate clean anyway, so normally the library is very attuned to that, because they don't want vulgar comedy in there after hours renting the library, but if you're clean, they're pretty cool with that. But no, mostly clubs, churches. I do a lot of church shows, being a clean Christian comedian.
Okay. Wow, excellent. So you got the death thing, you've got, your mother was in a rest home, you've been through depression. So then you've got the Christian element also in forming your comedy. I'm a Christian as well. And so I'm interested. Well, let me tell you this story. So I'm new to this area where I'm at, and I reached out to try to get booked on a show this past week's Sunday night. I was interacting with the specific booker, and this person was saying, wrote back and said, I don't know how they found this out. They must have read my website blog or something, but I don't book Christian comedians, which that kind of blew my mind, right? Because to me, funny's funny.
Yeah, absolutely.
The discrimination or the bigotry working in that direction did catch me off guard a little bit. I've never had someone just so explicitly say it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in your comedy as a Christian, are you telling, like, Bible-related jokes, theology-related jokes? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have my clean set that I do for the clubs and festivals and things like that. And then I've got my church set, which actually does have a few church-related jokes in it. So I kind of tailor it to where I'm at. I say that I don't go vulgar ever. I have clean for clubs and I have clean for church, and the church clean includes some church related jokes.
Right on. Yeah, I have a show in Kentucky, Louisville, Kentucky, coming up at a conference. It's called the Greek and Hebrew for Life Conference. It's a bunch of theologians, scholars, pastors, several hundred people. So I'm going to be performing at that.
That's awesome.
And it's a very different crowd than I've ever done like comedy for. I've presented almost 100 times at these kind of conferences, but I've never done comedy. So this will be my first time doing that. And I've written a lot of material that I'll just burn, right? Because I won't ever really probably be able to use most of it. It's so venue specific.
Sure.
And event specific that I'll just have to kind of burn it, I think. But yeah, I'm similar. I don't go out like in clubs and things like that and start telling Bible jokes and that sort of thing. Just work clean. And, I found that it's worked really well for me. Like, I don't go vulgar. I got a couple of edgy jokes, but I don't cuss. I don't go vulgar, those sorts of things. And, I guess some people don't want that at all. I get that. But yeah, so what's your writing routine like?
So right now I'm also writing a book, and so a lot of my writing lately has been for that. I'm doing and actually a lot of my stand-up humor is about weight loss because as an overweight person, and I've always been an overweight person since I was, 7, 8 years old. Diet culture has been ingrained in my life, and so I make a lot of jokes about that in my stand-up. But I also have been writing a book for it's like a weight loss comedy book, and so that's kind of been the primary focus of my writing lately has been that. But I'll just think of something and I've got to get it out there. Either it's a Facebook post, I've written it down in a journal, I've written it down on my phone, like, because otherwise my ADHD will not forget or will not remember that joke.
Right.
As much as I say, oh, I'll remember this and I'll put it in a set. Nope, it's gone. Once it comes in, it easily goes out.
Do you use a notebook, like a physical notebook? Do you use a phone? What do you do to keep your jokes?
Both. Actually, I was just talking to some fellow comedians last night about that because when I perform, I usually have my phone with my set on it, and I use like a Word doc just in there. But I've decided I want to go old school. I want to do a notebook because to me, I'm working on getting all of my jokes because I've got probably an hour and a half worth of written material that I've performed.
Right.
So I'm trying to get it all memorized. So I want to get to the point where I just have a notebook that has one word and that tells me what 5 minutes of material is going to be.
Right.
So that's what I'm
Excellent.
trying to get to.
Are you doing like a lot of one-liners? Do you do stories? Like, how do your bits come together?
It's a mixture, but mostly one-liners. That's why it's been so hard to memorize because I've got
Yeah.
my set is, I mean, I don't know if you watch the whole thing. I've got about 20 minutes on my website and it's like laugh per minute, laugh per 30 seconds. Like it is a quick rapid fire jokes kind of setup. So that's hard to memorize because I'm all over the place. And part of that is my ADHD brain. I go from one bit into another, into another, into another, and it's just boom, 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 boom.
So going back to the weight thing for a minute, do you find that if you're telling like a self-deprecating joke, or that you're addressing the issue of weight, does that make people uncomfortable?
It can. That's why I have to do it very delicately because I have made the mistake of going too what's the word? Self-deprecatory. Is that the right word? But so I actually did a stand-up set for, believe it or not, for a cannabis church.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know. They have since gone out of business, but they had an open mic and I jumped on it because I wanted to get that experience of doing an open mic. But I did some jokes there because I'm a scuba diver. And I told some jokes about not fitting into my, that I'm not going to wear a wetsuit because of my weight. And I don't even remember all of the jokes that I told at this point. But I went on a whole tangent and it really made the crowd uncomfortable because they were like, hey, it's like I talked to one of the comedians afterward and she said, hey, it's okay to like make fun of yourself. But it really got to the point where it was like people were pitying you. And I'm like, well, gosh, I don't want that. I want them to laugh with me. And so I've retailored those jokes to be more like, I guess, universal. Like everybody our culture is obsessed with food, obsessed with weight loss. Like I've done it in a more palatable way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's interesting when the audience gets more offended for you than you get offended for you, right?
Right.
And yeah, like I have some really personal jokes that I do in some of my bits, and I've found, I don't know if this would work for you if you've done something similar, but I've found that if I now start, like before I go into that bit, I'll ask the question, does anyone here have like messed up background, messed up family, like something like that? And first, usually like, sometimes people are hesitant to say yes because they're afraid of crowd work or something. But if I can get them to answer yes to that and admit that, then I'll like give them, well, I've got a pretty messed up story, and going forward, I'm giving you permission to laugh at everything I'm about to say, right? So like I've found that if I do that, it actually cuts off that pity thing, because I was getting that too before. There were points in a couple of shows where people were going, "Oh," instead of laughing, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
not at all the reaction that I'm trying to get here. But I found with that little disclaimer up at the top, it converts that "oh" to laughter. So yeah, I don't know. Sometimes we just maybe have to be explicit in giving them permission to laugh at us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, like the audience, such an interesting dynamic in stand-up comedy. Like every audience is different. Even the same audience on a different night can be very different, right?
Very true.
And you never know. You never really truly know what you're getting in an audience until you're up there on stage in front of them. And I find that to be maybe the most challenging part of stand-up comedy, like imagining, the audience are not really knowing what the audience is going to be or who it's going to be, and then having to read that in real time and adjust. Yeah.
Yep,
It's also one
absolutely.
of the most appealing and fun parts of stand-up comedy too. Yeah, so all right, well that's interesting, because I think the weight issue is just, it's super touchy in our culture in general, right?
Yes. Yes.
So to get up and to make self-deprecating jokes about that, I think that could be like a super super big challenge to do that.
For sure. And like you were saying, every crowd is different, and even the same venue, like to do the
Yeah.
same venue 2 nights in a row, but it's a different
Yep.
crowd. I have told the same joke 2 nights in a row, where one night it landed and like people were roaring, and then the next night it was crickets. And it's like,
Right.
I told it the same way. Nothing changed about my tone or my delivery. It's just completely different humans that, I don't know. I got the crotchety bunch on night 2, I guess. I don't know.
Yes, it is interesting how that works. I mean, just the crowd dynamics are so fascinating. Well, interesting. We're gonna bring the first episode here to an end, but we got a second episode coming up with Amanda, and what we're gonna do, she's gonna bring a joke that she's written or she's writing, and we're gonna hear the origin story of it, and then we'll see if we can punch it up or work on it a little bit, and then we're gonna try to make up some jokes on the spot in real time, which is one of my favorite aspects of these Messed Up to Setups podcasts. So
Sure.
let me show you before we end episode 1 here, Amanda's website, so you can go check that out for yourself, and you can also follow Amanda on socials. She's got Facebook, YouTube, and Insta. So AmandaHackerComedy.com. Amanda, can you see
Yes. Yep.
your site here? It's a
Yep.
very colorful, very popping website, and Amanda does all sorts of things: comedy benefits, weddings, performs at churches, cannabis churches when they're still in
Yeah.
business.
I should put a disclaimer on that. That was a one-time thing so I could get a mic under my belt. That was at the beginning of my comedy career.
That's funny. So you can check her out on YouTube. She's got some comedy clips up here on the site, and then sub to her socials. And we're both part of this CCC, the Clean Comedy Collective. You can check out their website as well. But get in touch with Amanda on there, and come back for part 2 of this interview, where, as I said, we are going to hear a joke that Amanda wrote, and we're going to try to work on it and punch it up and whatnot. So I'm really looking forward to that. But Amanda, thanks for coming on and being part of the Messed Up to Setups podcast.
Thank you.
Yes, we're glad to have you. And to everyone out there who's watching or listening, thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe on Spotify, on YouTube, and it'd be awesome if you'd reshare. So I'm Michael Halcomb. Check out michaelhalcomb.live. We are going to end there and say we hope that helps.
It's all messed up, yeah. Everything's messed up. We're going from this mess up to the next setup. Everything seems so